Alright guys, the Cata beta is out, and whether you're starting out from level 1 or level 80, we're all going to have to do some leveling when the expansion launches. When I tried to research some other opinions on this, the only info I could find was over 10 years old. So this is going to be a rundown of where my thoughts are and what I'm thinking, so that way you guys don't have to start from square one. If you're new here, you might want to subscribe for more content like this in the future. So interestingly, Cata was the first expansion where all the rogue specs saw use in a raid at some point. Now that doesn't really matter all that much because we're just going to play whatever does the most damage anyway. But if you want to check out the rotations, I highly recommend these old Preach videos where he goes over the classes and can give you an idea of what you'd be doing in a raid. If you're logging in at level 1, you're going to notice a lot of things have changed. You now have dual wield at level 1, and you need to be level 3 to learn Eviscerate. Sinister Strike is now horrible baseline, doing 42% weapon damage, and we're going to need talents to make it even a little bit okay now. This is the first classic expansion so far where Eviscerate doesn't suck anymore. So once you get it, you want to rip one out at like 2 or 3 combo points, and it should finish off whatever you're killing, at least in the early levels. Stealth no longer reduces your move speed, and at level 8 you get Ambush, which is now usable with any weapon and is going to be your go-to opener. At level 10 you get Talents, and that's where the real meat of this video is. And that is where most of your character progression is going to come from, considering actual abilities are really spaced out and low impact. You also get talent points every other level now, besides level 82, 83, 84, and 85. Cataclysm follows the rogue leveling theme of combat being generally the most well-rounded, with sub being the best once you have insane gear. This was the same at the launch of TBC and Wrath, but let me explain what exactly makes this the case. Starting off with Assassination, choosing it will give you Mutilate at level 10, as well as 20% increased poison damage, 50% increased poison application frequency, and 20% increased melee damage and 20 max energy when using daggers. 20% melee damage is great, and that combined with the poison bonuses gives you pretty good passive damage. It's noteworthy this version of Mutilate does not get bonus damage on poison targets, and you'll want a prime glyph that makes it cost 5 less energy, and you don't get Envenom until level 54. The talent tree Remorseless Attacks has been rebranded to Deadly Momentum, and this is just absolutely insane. It's the best talent in the tree for leveling by far. It gives you 80% crit on any ability after killing something, and it refreshes Slice and Dice and Recuperate when that happens. Really, the only downside is that it is nerfed to 15 seconds instead of 20 seconds, so you need to really get back in combat as soon as possible. In general, these 3 early rows give you a lot of power directed at your base abilities, and then the later rows are full of passives with points left over on the rows, so you can go back and get what you missed. The rest of the talent tree is really just things that would help you in a raid or killing a boss besides overkill. In Cata, you have to fill out the entire tree before you can sub-spec, but whenever you get Vendetta, you could go get improved Slice and Dice and improved Recuperate from combat, but I think going sub and getting Opportunity is probably the better way to go. Blizzard does a lot to help Assassination leveling, but its core identity is to stick on targets and proc poisons and DPS them for a really long period of time, and that really is just not synergistic with the leveling process. When it comes to energy regeneration, it is great that we could have overkill up basically all the time, but the focused attack talent has actually been removed, probably because of all that Fellstriker Fan of Knives stuff we were doing last expansion. Focused attack used to give us energy anytime that we crit, even with poisons, but now we have this new Venomous Wounds talent, which is going to require you to keep up Rupture. It does refund the Rupture energy if the target dies, but having to apply Rupture on every single target just to maximize your energy regen is just not going to be good for leveling. Cut to the chase, at the bottom of the tree, it doesn't even really do anything since we're refreshing Slice and Dice with Deadly Momentum anyway, and Assassination is the most weapon dependent spec, requiring you to use 2 daggers. Combat, on the other hand, is the least. It lets you run anything slow in the main hand besides the dagger and anything fast in the offhand. Going combat is going to give you Blade Flurry at level 10, and this is the new no cooldown Blade Flurry. It just reduces your energy regen. Spec in combat also gives you 25% increased energy regeneration literally all the time, 30% attack power, and 75% increased offhand and ranged ability damage. Any situation where you can cleave down 2 mobs at once with Blade Flurry, you of course should, and you can even turn on Blade Flurry in stealth now. Best thing combat has going for it is that 25% increased regen all the time. You don't have to work for it, you don't have to do anything, just all the time passively. And after we put 3 points in improved Sinister Strike and Aggression, Sinister Strike goes back to being kind of an okay ability again, dealing 90% weapon damage. Another thing that makes combat so great is what makes it great in every other expansion, which is the core gameplay pattern of just building up to 5 slowly and then doing a big finisher. And this is further amplified by Revealing Strike, and with the glyph of Revealing Strike, this is going to make your Eviscerates insanely fat, and that is exactly what we want to finish off mobs quickly. You might see improved Recuperate in here on the first row and think, oh, that's awesome, we should just have that up all the time, right? Well, in Cata, leveling is just really easy, and because it costs you an Eviscerate, you only really want to use Recuperate when you actually need it, because it's not going to automatically refresh like it would for Assassination. Unfortunately, the Unfair Advantage talent from Wrath was removed, which is one of my favorites, but similarly to Assassination, we gives you some great bonuses early on in the tree, and then later on it's more passives and cooldown based. After you get Killing Spree, go get Deadly Momentum immediately. You can dump the rest of the points in Coup de Grace for even fatter eviscerates, and then Lethality, Relentless Strikes, or Improved Ambush, whatever you really want. Another great benefit of combat is the glyphs. All of these prime glyphs are awesome for leveling compared to Assassination. Only really have ones that help in raid, like increased rupture duration. And keep in mind, everything that you're doing as combat, you can do on another target at the same time. Even if there's nothing around, you can easily drag one mob while you're killing it into another one, and then pop Blade Flurry and cleave a big eviscerate over to it. Now let's go into the final option, Subtlety. Going this spec at level 10 will give you Shadow Step, 10% increased damage when breaking stealth, 30% additional total agility, and 40% increased percentage damage bonus on backstab and hemorrhage. To say this spec requires some setup is an understatement, considering we don't even have Hemo until level 30, and both that 30% agility and 40% increased percentage bonus damage work off of total numbers, which are not going to be very high while leveling when we have bad gear compared to what we'll have at max level, which is what the passive is balanced around. And in case you didn't know, they changed Hemo and Wrath of the Lich King to have Great Dagger scaling on it now. This spec is primarily focused around doing a massive ambush, which either one-shots the mob, or you can then eviscerate the mob and then finish it off and then move on to the next one. It really takes off on the third row with Hemorrhage and Energetic Recovery. This is going to give you 12 energy every 3 seconds with Recuperate up. Now the same thing goes for combat. You don't actually really want to use Recuperate unless if it's necessary. And if you're playing this, the mob should die pretty much instantly, so you shouldn't really take damage or need to regenerate your energy in combat. However, on the Cata beta right now, if a mob dies with combo points still left on it, you can still cast a finisher like Slice and Dice or Recuperate after it's dead. So if you one-shot the mob with an ambush or any time that you have spare combo points, you can just throw up a Recuperate between mobs to regen your health and energy. And you should even get back the cost of the Recuperate anyway. After you get Shadow Dance, you want to go get Deadly Momentum right away, and then Coup de Grace, Lethality, and Improved Recuperate are nice pickups as well, maybe Precision if you want. The subtree is completely packed with PvP talents, and your prime glyphs are super important, or at least one is. At the level 50 row following Hemo is this Sanguinarity Vein thing, and that gives you 16% more damage done to bleeding targets. And there is a prime glyph that makes Hemo put up a bleed, which is fantastic, so that we don't have to do any stupid rupture stuff that Assassination has to do. It's also worth noting, Sub does have the worst AoE in the game compared to the other two specs. They just didn't give us anything that affects Fan of Knives, so if you want to spam dungeons, you probably want to be combat instead. Sub and Assassination have increased move speed with the Night Stalker and Quickening talents, but this really shouldn't matter because you get your mount at level 20 anyway in Cata, and so passive run speed is really not as critical as it would be in vanilla WoW. I didn't really mention masteries all that much because you unlock this at level 78, and even after you do, you don't really have any mastery on your gear until you start replacing with Cata gear. So it doesn't really affect leveling all that much, but Assassination is more poison damage, combat is a proc for another attack, and Sub is more finisher damage. For leveling, it's no question that the Sub mastery is the best, and the other two are just kind of fine. So like I said at the start, if you're unable to essentially kill mobs instantly, then you really can't be combat. But if you're going into Cata with a Wrath of the Lich King rogue, they have a ton of gear on, and you can grab up a Heaven's Fall from Heroic Lich King. Going Sub is going to be tons of fun to not only one-shot quest mobs, but also other players. In summary, I am super excited to level up on the rogue in Cataclysm. It is a huge bummer that you can't grab Deadly Momentum and then go down Sub or combat or something like that, but that's probably why the ability is so good. It's balanced around you not being able to do that. But anyway, this is just all the stuff that I noticed whenever I was looking around at the options and the talent trees and everything. Of course, anything is playable in Cata, and leveling is really easy, and I mean, leveling in WoW isn't exactly difficult in general, so if you want to do your own thing, go ahead. I just wanted to get this video out there to let you know what the positives and negatives would be, so that way you can plan accordingly, because there are shockingly little resources on the subject. But thanks for watching the whole video. If you want to level something up in Season of Discovery, check out my big leveling playlist for all the classes, and see you guys next time.